Good day. Thanks for joining us. Today I'm going to be talking about collaborative risk management for planning in uncertain times. I'm Tom Gezo, and I'm with the Community Foundation Nonprofit Resource Center. So a little bit about the current environment for context. The nonprofit environment has always been challenging, but it's becoming even more difficult. Even so, there still is an urgent need to develop plans for your organization. But how do you do that in the midst of all this uncertainty? So hopefully I can help you a little bit, because today we'll talk about uncertainty at a high level and also using collaborative risk management to plan for and manage risks to your organization. So why think about risks? Want to maximize outcomes for your organization, protect your organization from uncertainty, reduce the likelihood of problems occurring or from escalating if they do, and to really be able to be proactive in your management, to have a plan at all times should these risks occur. And lastly, to balance risk exposure with the risk tolerance of the organization. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Where does uncertainty come from? Things we can anticipate, the normal stuff, if you will, funding dynamics and so on. And then there's also the chance for things that are completely unforeseen and unanticipated. Those cannot be predicted. They just happen when they happen. So we'll talk a little bit about how to deal with that too. So where do we start? Our track record is a good place. What kind of historical, how has your organization been performing? Do you have trend data on expenses? Do you have trend data on events that you've held, donor generosity, and so on? And you're going to want to think about the good and the bad. Environmental factors, these are things external to your organization, industry trends and demographics, and alternatives. Who else is out there in your space, and how are they doing, and what are they doing? And then, of course, to start things off, we get going on a detailed risk analysis. But first, let's talk a little bit about risk tolerance. What's right for your organization? If I were to put a big pot of gold on one end of a plank and you on the other over a chasm that gets a long way down, would you be willing to make that walk of 5 paces or so? Would you be more comfortable if that plank was over a parking lot and it was 2 or 3 feet high and walking for that same pot of gold? I think most of us would be more comfortable there. So these are 2 boundary cases for organizations. Some are risk averse, some are more risk tolerant, and you may slide left or right on any particular project or program that your organization is taking. But generally, these things are pretty stable for an organization. So what's a risk? It's an uncertain event or condition that if it occurs, it will either be positive, negative effect on an organization or a project. We call negative risks threats and positive risks are opportunities. And normally when we think about risks, we normally think about threats, but it's good to consider opportunities as well. 3 components to every risk: an event, the probability of that event occurring, and then the impact. What's at stake? How much you can gain, how much can you lose? Kinds of risks that we think about: project risks, the known unknowns that we talked about, unknown unknowns. So these are things that are associated with a given program or a given project. There's also business risk. This is what we manage on a day-to-day basis. Opportunity for gain or loss, depending on how good and your business is doing. Or, in balancing that risk and reward. Then there's also pure risk, and that's an opportunity for loss only. Fires, floods, these sort of things. There's a way to deal with that, typically through insurance. So the collaborative risk management is a 5-step approach, and I'll take you through each of the steps in turn, and here we go. So the very first is to identify risks. So assemble your team and And you want a varied team, different points of view. You want the person that can only find the faults with the project. You want the optimists, and you want everybody in between, and people that know some smoke about what it is that you do. And you basically use these little sticky Post-its as a planning tool in your conference room with a whiteboard or some flip charts. And I'm fond of saying, write it, say it, so everybody knows what risk you've identified, and then slap it. So write it, say it, slap it right on the board, and anything and everything that comes to mind. Second step is to analyze the probability and impact. So how likely is the risk to occur for probability? You look at your all your stickies, and are there any duplicates? Throw those right out. And then you assign a probability. 0 means no chance of occurring, low, medium, or high. And you write that in the bottom left-hand corner of the sticky note. Any risks that have 100% probability, those are what we call assumptions, if you're quite certain it's going to happen, and we'll keep those aside. And any risks that have a 0 probability, we get rid of those, because if it's never going to happen, keep it handy for future reference, but it's not something we need to work on. So the impact is going to be using the same scale, low, medium, high, or 0. And you put that in the right-hand corner of the sticky. And any with a 0 impact, we throw those out, because if it happens, it's not going to impact the organization. The next part is to prioritize the risks. So for that, we're going to put a matrix on that whiteboard, and with probability on the up axis, low, medium, and high, and impact across the bottom, low, medium, and high, just as in the picture there. Assumptions are off to the side. And then we're going to take our sticky notes with the probability and impact on them, and place it in the appropriate section of the matrix. And what we want to get to is, if you can imagine here, probability, impact, and identifying on a heat map which risks are unacceptable and which are high risks, so that we can work on those. Which is the next step: establish actions for high priority risks. So here are some options. If it's a threat, we can avoid it, transfer it, mitigate it, or accept it. If we accept it, we have money available should it occur. Most of the actions that you'll take will likely be mitigation, and that is to reduce the probability and or the impact to an acceptable level. So that's with threats. For opportunities, similar kinds of opportunities. So you can do exploit, prepare the project to ensure that things come out, share it, partner with a third party. So think about like the NFL, the pink sneakers years ago, where they working for breast cancer awareness. You can enhance it, increase the probability and impact, or hey, if it happens, let it flow. I'm happy to enjoy the benefits. It doesn't happen that often. So for each high risk, you brainstorm countermeasures to avoid or mitigate the risk or your strategy. And then you select the best countermeasures that help to reduce the risk to your tolerance level. So before we get to the last step, it's important to write it down, because all this good work, you want to be sure that you have it to continue to use it as you're progressing. So a risk register looks something like this. It's got the risk event, a probability and impact. These are right off your sticky notes. You can make some comments, and I wrote in some things about how you might gauge your high, medium, and low. And then the countermeasures. And you can see those unacceptable, high, must plan for those. Trigger events are things that can happen just ahead of the risk of taking place, so that you can kind of put your antennas up. Okay, this is going to make that risk more likely, and you can start to pay attention or start your countermeasures. And then someone that's responsible for monitoring that risk, and should it occur, starting the countermeasures. So the last step is to monitor and update it regularly. And I say that's the easy part. Sometimes it's the hardest to keep at it. When should you do that? At the beginning of each planning cycle, if you're on an annual cycle particularly. Following significant changes, if you have a leadership change or major change to the organization operations. Key milestones for projects. And it's not a bad idea to do it quarterly, just a quick review to refresh your memory on the kinds of things that you're going to be looking out for in the short term. So the bottom line, having a robust risk management process allows you to set expectations, avoid surprises, and be prepared for most eventualities. Stuff is still going to happen, but it's nice to have a practice response when risks do occur. Thanks very much for the good work that you do. It's been my pleasure to present this topic. If you have any questions, reach out to me through the Community Foundation, and you'll also find these charts available for your ability to download.